Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 146. And this is kind of an odd show today. We had a little bit of scheduling conflicts. I don't know where Josh is. He's kind of missing in action, but hopefully everything's all right and he will join us. Last time, there was a time where he worked overtime and they took a nap and his alarm didn't go off. So hopefully it's something like that. But hopefully Josh will be joining us. And if you were watching last week, you know that I've mentioned that we're going to have Peter Samedi on. And if you've been following any of that stuff, he's the publisher of Alterna Comics. He kind of got embroiled in some controversy and kind of took a break from the internet. So now he's trying to catch up. But he will be back on the show in 2 weeks. So I was like, oh, what do I do now? I've promised everyone a great show, so I've got to pull out all the stops. So I hit up the man who started the Artcasters, who basically, it was me, Kevin Cross, and this guy, Jeff Lafferty. How's it going, Jeff?
Hey, Scott.
Thank you for coming on in such short notice. I know you said that you couldn't do the show until you finished the 100 days, but you're like 5 days away from completing your challenge. So I figured I'd hit you up anyway.
Yeah, it's all downhill from here. So yeah, I figured what the heck.
So yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. But first, usually we kind of it's weird because we go around, Josh and I introduce ourselves and then we introduce our guest. But since our guest is somebody who's been on the show before, I'll just go ahead and start with you first. So Jeff, where can everyone find you? Anything you want to promote? Anything like that?
Everybody can find me at jefflafferty.net. That's my website. And I guess the only thing I got to promote is my comic book, which is the Berserkonaut, and it's on IndieGoGo in demand. So the campaign's over, but it's still available if you want to buy the book. You can grab it there.
Yeah, and I definitely want to know how that works with what's the term called, like Indigo in demand?
Yeah, it's called in demand, and it's just like it kind of just rolls your campaign into a store, so you can actually keep up all the pledges and everything that like all the tiers and the whole thing. I actually got rid of like the original art and some of the more like the bigger ones that were still left, and just kind of left it down to like a book, signed book, that kind of stuff, just because I didn't really want to take on any more than I already had. So
I don't know how all this works, but I thought you mentioned that that's up until you actually ship the books, or is that even after that? How does that work?
Yeah, I don't know how long it really can go for. I suppose it says in there, but I'm just going to go until I guess until I get the final order for the books, I think, because like when I haven't actually said how many books I'm going to buy until I get the proof back, then I can nail it down. So I think I'm going to wait until I just get to the point where it's like, okay, this is how many books are going to go, and then I think I'm going to like shut it off there, because I figure that's close enough to like eventually the books will be in my store once they come to me here, and I can start selling them. So it's not like there's not so many variables, Yeah. I mean, I hate to like go to print and then 20,000 people come on or something, which that probably won't happen. But just to be on the safe side, I guess, so that everybody gets what they ordered.
Exactly. So yeah, I want to definitely come back to IndieGoGo, but I think we should kind of backtrack and kind of start from the beginning. So you probably remember this way back when everyone else was doing the challenge, and you were kind of against. You weren't so big on those challenges, and you kind of
I'll never forget.
Gave us some pushback about doing the challenge and everything, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, after a while goes by, I'm like, I'm doing the challenge, and I'm like, what? Jeff's doing the challenge? So why the change of heart, Jeff?
Right. I had to eat my own words. Man, I don't know why I was like against the challenge back then. I guess I was just jealous of you guys, because I was like doing commissions and wanted to do comics, but then you guys were actually doing it. So I'm not sure. I don't know why I was kind of. I don't think I was I against it?
No, but it was all good fun. But it was.
I was always against like the whatever that one in October is, Ink October or whatever.
The Inktober,
I always would see people fall off their projects, so I always like would bash on that one for no reason. But I think the thing with like you guys all did the 100 Days of Comics and did it like quite a few times. And then I was always having to work on my stuff. So I just figured like, I can't do a comic because that would just derail me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then, some stuff kind of changed in my life. Like my wife went back to work. That was a big one. So all of a sudden it kind of eased off my bills a little bit. And I just thought, and you know what actually did also is like I started the comic and I always was like, I'm working on the side. It'll work out. And then I kept doing like this thing, like the classic comic book artist move, which is like start a comic and then like leave it alone for 6 months and then go back to it for 3 pages and then leave it alone for, a long time. And then, I just, eventually I kind of started thinking like, hey, maybe that 100 Days of Comics thing might get me like cemented into like, really taking this thing seriously and like get it done. Because I was about halfway done with the book when I started. I think I was on page like 12 or 13. And so, and then I ended up getting done, so it actually did its job. It really did focus me and it took me to the end, which is really cool. So
that's cool. So I don't know if anyone has actually, I don't know if this has happened where somebody's actually finished their comic book within the challenge and still had days left. Yeah. Maybe it's happened. So many people have done it. I don't know, but I know I'm still working on my comic. Probably almost a year after I did the challenge. So, but I am getting close. but you had 3 issues. You said.
Yeah, but you got 3 issues out. I just did the first issue.
Right.
So you got like 3 issues. You got like a lot more work.
Well, I had one before the first time I started. The first time I did the challenge was with my second issue. No, I think I had 2 issues out. I think I started on because I've only done it twice. I started on the 3rd issue and then the 4th issue. And once I wrap up this 4th issue, I don't know if I'm going to do. If I do it again, I'm probably not going to do it every day. I'm probably just going to do a weekly update. Because sometimes now that the channel's starting to grow, it's like I don't know if that's going to detract from the other stuff because I want to do different content. Mm. But I know, like with you, it's interesting because you're doing the challenge, but it's also you were able to kind of work it also into your Artcast, and also so it also has a topic. So it's not like the same thing every day. You always have a topic and stuff, which I guess other people do. But I did get a message from Josh saying that his internet was crapping out, but you want to know if we started. But I told him to hop in, so hopefully he'll be joining us.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So just kind of watching you kind of go through the challenge and everything, there's definitely some ups and downs, and there's like, especially towards the end with the funding, but it's like, it seems like everything kind of ended up working out. But I remember, I remember, and I didn't kind of know, I figured something must have happened, in your life, and you mentioned your wife going back to work, but I wasn't sure if just just your sales were going up that gave you more time to do the comic. Cause it was kind of like it seemed like every time you tried to kind of move away a little bit from the fan art, started to do your own original stuff. Yeah. I mean, you went into it and then for whatever reason, you kind of had to go back. And then I always kind of felt bad, especially like even with the stop motion and stuff. And when you wanted to do the paintings. So when you started doing the comics, I was like so happy for you because it seemed like something you always wanted to do.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, how's it going?
Hey, Josh. Hey, Josh.
I don't know why. I've been trying to log on for like a while, so my internet was
all right. So a little belated, but Josh, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me at quarterlystories.com or lurking on Jeff's YouTube channel, leaving comments and stuff. How you doing, guys?
Good. Yeah, we introduced Jeff. I didn't introduce myself, but I don't think I need to because you're on my channel. So, nice. So we'll just hop back in. But we were just kind of talking about sort of the beginning. We were talking about how Jeff, in the beginning, he was. We kind of established he wasn't necessarily against the 100 days, but he kind of poked a little fun at us. And it's just kind of like it was. I remember the same thing when you and Kevin were on me about doing Patreon, which I am planning. I think in the next year, I got a lot of stuff planned for next year. I'm going to have a new website, like a lot of cool stuff. So the Patreon is kind of part of that plan. So I'm late, but Patreon, newsletter, all that stuff. I'm working on that stuff in the background. So
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I do a Patreon.
Yeah. So, but we were just we were talking about how Jeff kind of, it seems like he's always kind of wanted to he moved into doing some more of his original stuff, his comics and stop motion, all that kind of stuff. So finally he got a chance to do that, and he take the challenge, and now he's completed his book. It's funded, all this stuff. So, but it hasn't been doesn't seem like it's been a smooth road.
No. And you're right. That's what happened, like, over and over again, because like, you know, I mean, we were on the Artcast like long before, even before like this show, we were doing just the working hangouts and all that stuff. Yeah. And I would always like come on with some weird idea, fantasy art for a while, and then, like you said, stop motion for a while, and yeah, they were all an attempt, you know, to get kind of away from fan art, which, you know, I would always like defend for sure, and I still defend it, but it's like, yeah, it just wasn't, you know, it's like, it's hard to like build your whole career, you know, around something like that, because it's, you know, it's always on the verge of being taken away from you, I think. Yeah. And then on top of that, you want to do your own, or what'd you say?
I was just gonna say, I don't know if that will ever actually happen. Right. But,
well, I meant just, you know, like every time something happens, though, you know, maybe they don't ban it like worldwide, but it's like, people can come at you and you have like kind of no defense, you know, like somebody wants to take your prints down, somebody wants to take your store down. Well, it's down, and you got to go over here and do a different way, you know? And so I was always kind of dealing with that. Not that bad, but the main thing was just, I just wanted to do my own stuff like you guys, you know? And you're right. I mean, that's why I kept kind of stopping, is because it's just like the money thing would always come in. Yeah. And yeah, as far as like my fan art business and selling art, everything's going fine. I still probably do as much as I did before.
Cool.
But it's just now, you know, I don't know. At some point I was like, okay, if I'm going to change things around, and that was part of the 100 days of comics, because I thought if I do 100 days of comic book videos on my YouTube channel, it's kind of like drawing a line in the sand. You know what I mean? And a lot of people have been like, hey, what else are you doing? Put that other stuff on there. But yeah, that stuff ain't coming on. It's not going on my website. People aren't seeing it. So it's like things are moving towards the comic, and that's where I want them to go, you know? That's
cool. Now, I assume that in the beginning that it might have been hard to kind of convert people over, because people were used to seeing, because the comic book's in a very different style than your movie style, kind of movie poster art style. So did you get any like pushback on that, or?
Yeah. Definitely got pushback, especially in the beginning, and still now, and, you know, pushback in different ways, you know, like just, you know, people I owed commissions to would pop up, like, you know, be like, when's that getting done, you know, when they were just fine with like waiting for a month before and stuff. And I think that was kind of an effort to kind of guide me back into what they wanted to see. But like, I don't know, you know, it's what really ends up happening is like people that are just into that kind of style and into that kind of work and just want that from me, they kind of just drop off and they go find it somewhere else. And then there's a lot of people that, you know, used to comment on my videos and love that stuff, and they like the comic. I mean, I got a lot of people from my first Kickstarter give to this Kickstarter, or give to this IndieGoGo. And that's weird to me, because you'd think, well, they're into that, they're not going to be into this, but maybe they're just into art. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I think for me, it was so cool to see you initially like jumping on the 100 days, because I too, like, I remember Jeff, when you were on the show, like on a weekly basis, I think you and I both would be like, yeah, like for me, my argument was always like, well, I do the hundreds, but I'm doing the hundreds daily, like I'm already working on it, you know, that kind of thing. And I think you and I would kind of go back and forth with like why we're not going to do the hundreds. And it's such a cool experience once you do it. I mean, it's exhausting and it's a lot of work, but it's like, to me, when like, because I had just like, I was just coming off of it for my first time, and you jumped on and we're gonna do it, and I was like, yes, like, because like, like for me, it's like seeing you do, you know, Berserkonaut, or your own properties, even when you were doing stop motion and stuff, like to me, that's the stuff I want to see, like very selfishly, that's what I want to see. Yeah. And I think there are people who kind of come along with you, but yeah, it's also like, it's not like a walk in the park to get that stuff done. 'Cause like at the same time, the returns for that aren't always what they would be for like one commission, you know?
Right.
So it's like, that's, to me, I'm just like, I'm excited to see it and to see it get funded. I'm stoked. I'm looking forward to seeing the book, but it's like, it's, I don't know. It's just also cool to have somebody kind of like, it's cool to see you making your vision happen for something, you know?
Yeah.
And you do that all the time anyway, but I think, there's something really cool that I think you'll get out of like your own properties that you just can't get from like somebody being like, draw this for me, you know? I don't know if that makes sense, but
No, I totally agree that. I feel that all the time because I really, I mean, I think that's the biggest problem with my art career, like, you know, lately anyway, is just, I mean, I hate to say it. Hopefully there's nobody, none of my clients or whatever listening, but just flat out boredom. You know, you're just like, Iron Man, okay. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You just get tired of like, you know, some guy's crazy idea of what they want drawn. And you're just like, I've done it. You know, there's no passion. I mean, and that's probably on my side. You know, I shouldn't complain about something that I tried so hard to make happen. But
Yeah.
I think, you know, I don't know. I didn't, you know, go start to be an artist to do the kind of work I was doing. This just sounds horrible. I'm just like totally trashing myself, but it's just like to do the kind of work I was doing. And yeah, I wanted to change it desperately. And I don't know. I don't know that this will work either because it's like, it's hard to make comics work for sure. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Even if it doesn't work though, I really like just working. I understand kind of like where you're coming from because it's like you have always had that side project. You always talk to me about, you know, maybe it's better to have a job and to have the side project because then you have your own thing and you don't have the pressure on that. And I kind of see that, you know what I mean? It's kind of nice to just have your own thing, that thing that you can look forward to working on, you know, at night when everybody goes to bed and stuff. So.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing is it's like you have a job, you just have a really cool job. Like, you know,
Right.
your job is painting and painting
Right.
commissions and like so which is a really good job. That's a really rad job. And as long as you kind of maintain that and it's like to me that's the thing. It's like whatever's kind of paying the bills, like and this is something to kind of defend you a bit too. I don't think you were talking yourself down because I've met guys who like, you know, work on Star Wars, you know, films and really want to get done and clock out so they can work on, you know, their own stuff. And I mean, you know, thinking about it as somebody who like, I've never worked like officially on like a Star Wars movie or something. And to me, that would be like the epitome of the coolest job ever, something like that, you know? But I know some people who do it. And like I said, it really winds up being about the same story where they're like, you know, it's fun to do, but I want to work on my own properties,
Yeah.
you know? And so it's like, I do think there's something weird in us as creators where it's like, we really want to, it's like we have to be making stuff. And yet it's financially not the most lucrative thing, you know, to make our own thing. But to me, it's like just seeing anybody make it work, anybody kind of take that, especially with the talent and just abilities you have. It's like, it's so exciting to see, like I said, your own property kind of created because it's like that's in you and that's always going to be in you. You know, nobody can take that, you know, or I don't know if that makes sense. I'm rambling,
Yeah.
but I'm so pumped and excited to see it because like to me it's like that's your own property and that's a massive I don't know, just I think for a creator that's the most fulfilling thing you can do. So it's not, I don't think it means you like hate all your paintings or like all your clients or anything like that. It's like I think that's great and that's, I'm sure you're grateful for it because that sustains you and allows you to kind of do the other stuff as well, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like that, at least that's how I view it. Because like my day job's a pretty cool day job, but it's like, you know, to me it's no different than freelance or anything else I've been doing. It's like the whole goal of that job is just to enabled me to make comics for nothing. You know, I don't know if that makes sense. And hopefully that becomes the main hustle, you know, like that's at least that's my hope, and I'm sure all of us, you know.
Well, Scott used to always say it though, like the whole thing about, you know, that long term versus the like short term, you know what I mean? And like to me, like the commissions are always that short term, and that's definitely why I went towards them, because I needed money right now, you know what I mean? I needed to make a living now. And but you know, like the comic, you put like so much more into it, but then it's like you also build something that's like a lot more of a stable base, you know what I mean? Like something that has like a lot more potential to really support you in the future than like, you know, than sort of like the short term sort of commissions or fan art or something like that, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, just to the cool thing to me to see you doing the hundreds and stuff is like you already have like this amazing kind of discipline as an artist to kind of go against the grain, to kind of fight like to get this beautiful art done for commissions, you know, and really just kind of like own any, like I literally, I don't know any commission artists who are like doing the level of work you do. Like it's crazy good, like what you do for your clients, you know? And to me, it's so like I said, it's really cool to see that translate to your own property and that long-term thing happen. And like, to me, it's just I don't know. The only thing that I feel kind of sucks, and this is just a personal thing about making projects like that, is like for me, like once I opened Pandora's box of like kind of really starting to see my own property come to life, it does make everything else just kind of more irritating. You know, it makes it less fun to kind of work on like stuff that I would have been excited for. You know, before, because like you were just saying, it's like, you know, you can get an Iron Man thing, and like a year ago you'd be like, yeah, this is awesome, I'm drawing Iron Man and I'm getting paid and I'm an artist, you know, this is rad. And once you open that Pandora's box of like your own art, where it's like there's a little vulnerability to it, and it's like once you kind of put that out there, it's just like it opens this whole world of dissatisfaction. You know, I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it totally does. And I think you're right. It's like, you know, it really shows like the perspective of your mind, because you're right. You know, you can totally feel super excited about a commission and be like super into it, and you can also be like, God, what a pain in the ass, why did I take that? You know what I mean? And it a lot of times it depends. And I anytime I would start like some side project, you know, it was like stop motion or whatever, always that it would, you know, always just like start messing up my, you know, my commissions, because I would, you know, I'm bad about that. Like I'm not a kind of guy who plays video games and stuff like that, but I'll like put off doing my, you know, my art that I need to do. I'll be over here working on something that totally, you know, isn't worth anything, you know, and just taking up all my time doing that. So I don't know. It's kind of like my vice in a way, but then also the thing that gets this stuff done, I guess.
Well, that's great.
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna say real quick. What I think it was cool is that what you said before is that you said you're still selling about the same amount of your movie art, which is cool, because before, I mean, it was almost like when you're doing the videos, you're also promoting that style of art. So if you can kind of keep selling that without having to do that and focus more, I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Well, yeah, I would say it's definitely slowed down though. I mean, I meant it in more in the sense that like when I was doing it before and making videos, I mean, I'd always have like a commission list that was like 20 people deep. And so I'd be like way down the line, and people would be have to wait like a couple months to get a piece. And now it's more like, you know, 1-2 pieces a week. So it's kind of comparable, because that's kind of what I was doing then. But, you know, now I do a lot more drawings. I don't do, you know, it's hard to get me to do a painting now. So it's like most of them are drawing. So like the 2 a week are less than, you know, the painting ones. And like I've taken all my prints down. My prints are just completely gone. So like that whole side of the income's gone. So, I mean, in a way it has slowed down, but you're right. It's like all of the client work comes from, and I think that's one of the reasons I've kind of really tried to stick with it, is just because it's come from old clients. And feel bad about saying, no, I don't want to do it anymore. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Did you take the prints down because they weren't selling as much, or you just didn't want to deal with all the shipping? Or
No. I mean, yeah, I hate to say it, dude. You've had an influence on me. It's like I'm trying to I'm trying to go Berserkonaut. You know what I mean? I want to do comics. I want like people when they come and they see my thing to be like, he's that guy who does that comic. I don't want it to be. I don't want to mix up the brands in a way. So that was one of the things. Even though it is a little less income, it's just like
Well, I mean, I don't want to give you the impression that I didn't like your movie stuff, because I mean, I've got your art book and everything, and I love it, and it's great. But I also, I love comics too. So to see you do a comic is pretty awesome. Yeah. So,
well, I was just talking about the way you always kind of talk about like your mad scientist stuff.
Right.
I remember, you used to talk about that a lot. Like, I don't want to do like fan art at my conventions because blah blah blah, or So
yeah, and I do fan art on my channel from time to time too. So I don't want to.
Right.
But I want the main focus to be on, my mad science stuff. But yeah. So you were going to say something, Josh?
Oh, I just, I think that's the thing is like, I think it comes from a selfish place. Like the whole, just being so excited about what you're doing. Cause like I was saying, it's like the quality of your work's always been like just top notch and kind of ridiculous and amazing. But just like, to me, that's always my interest, because I'm an artist who like, I do stuff. Like I've done fan art too. Like I did a, Monty Python show recently, and that was one of the most fun things I've ever done, like as an artist. And yet, it's like pretty much if it weren't for the, like Monty Python's movies or whatever, like nobody would be like a huge fan of that poster I did,
Yeah, sure.
But the thing I love seeing is like, I love that, because that's a realm I did open Pandora's box in, it's like, there's a part of me, it's almost like a crack addict. I just want to see more people doing comics, it's like, cause I've never really had monetary gain from it, but it's like, at most I've kind of broken even maybe. But it's such a fun medium. And I think, I don't know, to me, I've just always known you're a comic guy at heart, and you've done comics in the past and stuff. And it's like, I feel like it's just so cool. And I like anybody who watches the show too, I'd encourage like any artists who like really want to get going on comics, like don't wait, just do it now. Like just, especially like, if you're getting sucked into like the commercial realm where you're doing art and stuff like that, like get your own thing going now. Cause like, even if, and Jeff, like you were saying, it's like, I think a lot of the hesitation on my own part, like I took like 2 years off when I first had my kid. And a lot of it was just like,
right.
Straight fear. Like, I don't know, for me, it was like a lot of fear. Cause it's a hard hustle doing your own art and freelancing and stuff. It's like, you got to keep the roof over your head, and you're doing it with art. And that alone is like close to impossible to make happen. And there's not everybody who tries it like succeeds at it. So just to like get to that point requires so much work and so much time, like building up like a client base that's going to commission you for paintings and stuff like that in itself is like a huge amount of work. So there's this hesitation, at least for me there was, to get into it, because of this almost like a fear that like, well, the floor could drop out, But for me, like recently, that's been kind of the thing that's kind of helped me, is like, it hasn't really sucked away from the time to do professional work. It's like, you just kind of make the time. And so to me, it's so cool. Like when you're describing, like, okay, so the commissions, like the prints have cut back a little bit, but the commissions are still flowing. You're still able to get out like a similar amount. and yet you're also able to knock out a comic like quicker than I could, you know, and it's like a fully painted comic. So it's not like this like unambitious project. It's like fully traditionally painted. Yeah, to me, that's so cool. And I hope that's inspiring for people out there too, or like, maybe on the fence about their comics or whatever, or like, maybe where like I think all of us have been, where it's like, you know, you're kind of taking the paying work, and that in itself is so hard that it's like, well, this dream can kind of sit on the shelf for a little bit, because like get it off the shelf and just do it, because otherwise like we're all, you know, comics take time, man, and like Jeff, you knocked it out quick, but it's still been a long time working on that thing. So
I agree with you, though. It's like you know, the longer you wait, I think the harder it is. And that was like another reason, I think, with the 100 Days of Comics, why I thought maybe it'd be a good idea, because, you know, I mean, I did one self-published comic a while ago called Jack the Giant Killer, and it was kind of a mix between like children's book and a comic. And then like the way it was supposed to work was the first one was supposed to be kind of almost like a story tale or story book, you know what I mean, like a kid's book with illustrations, and then the second 2 issues were going to be like a comic, and I never did the second 2 issues, you know. And so like, but anyway, my point is like that was the only self-published comic I ever could like get myself to do, you know. I have worked in comics and stuff, and I you know, worked and hit my deadlines and all that kind of stuff, but it's like so different doing stuff yourself, you know. And so like this is like the first one where I feel like I finally did it. I finally made my comic, you know what I mean? And so like that's what I mean, is it's just like I wish I'd have done this when I was in my 20s, you know what I mean? I wish I would have waited until I was as old as I am now, you know.
Yeah, no, it's and the weird thing is, like, to me, this is something I always try to remind myself of, is because it's like, just because you're in it and you're making them now, it's like it's super easy to fall back into not, you know, because it is work. And anyone out there who thinks comics aren't work, do the hundreds, do the 100 days of making comics, and you'll see how much work it is.
Yeah.
So talking about that, did you have anything else to add on to that, Josh?
Go for it, man.
Okay. Well, I just kind of wanted to go back again, because I wanted to kind of go through the process of, you know, starting the challenge and kind of some of the, you know, the challenges you had and some of the triumphs and things, and then move on to, you know, the whole thing with, you know, funding it, and then after that, kind of go into kind of what your future plans are. You had mentioned you're really big on getting this in the store, but so I wanted to kind of go through all that, but I want to talk about, you know, because it's, you had mentioned it has been a struggle. I mean, and I think anyone that's taken this challenge, like Josh said, I mean, it definitely can be a struggle. So, so how has that experience kind of been, just the challenge itself?
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge has definitely been tough. Yeah, I won't lie. It was a lot harder. Like for a guy who basically, you know, because I used to do daily videos all the time. And I kind of dropped off. I guess I was doing, you know, maybe 1 video a week or 2 videos a week kind of thing. But I still felt like, oh, yeah, I can do daily videos. I'm like freaking, you know, YouTube Superman, no problem, you know. I just was all cocky about it. And so then when I actually got down to doing like daily videos again, I was like, wow, this is like a freaking lot of work to just make the video on top of making the comic, you know. And so that was like the first challenge of it for sure, was just having the, you know, just dedicating like that extra hour to like just putting the video together, getting it up online, you know, posting the keywords and do the title, all that stuff, you know.
Yeah, the video might be harder. I wonder if the video is harder than the comic itself sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, yeah.
I kind of think so. Something. And then what always gets me too is when you get to that choice where you're like, all I got is like 2 hours. You know what I mean? So do I draw or do I freaking make this video? And that's hard, because you're like, I'm trying to do a comic here. Why am I doing this video?
Yeah. It is that thing. And I think anyone that's taken the challenge kind of thinks that it's like, is it helping me or hindering me from finishing my comics? And it might be a little bit of both, you know. But I still look at it as it's good. Anytime you can work on your book and share it and build up, build up an audience for it. I think that's really important. And I think also people, I mean, you've kind of already established yourself. You've been online and on YouTube for a while, but I think a lot of the people that are just starting off, that's one thing that I find that the challenge is really good for, is that because the community centered around the 100 Days of Making Comics is just so supportive, is that once you start it, it's like that can kind of help you build an audience. And again, I mean, all this stuff takes time with YouTube and everything, but I think definitely if you're taking the challenge, you're going to grow an audience faster, most likely, than if you were just doing comics in general. I just think because a lot of people that have done it want to kind of jump in and you know, offer their support and everything. And to be honest, right now, it's been so long, and since other than YouTube, I've been really bad about keeping track of social media and Facebook and all that kind of stuff, and Twitter and all that. So I don't know is there a hub right now where people because I know you had mentioned a couple people that I hadn't heard of, and I checked out one, I couldn't find the other. But the new people that are starting, is there a place I can go to find out where they are so I can check out their videos and stuff?
Yeah, I pay attention to that Facebook page you guys got.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only place I really see people post. Cool. But I agree. You know, it's like, I do think that like there is a benefit, and I wanted to do like the daily videos because like you guys did it, like, you know, Kevin Cross did it, and, you know, Peter and everybody that is like in that club did the videos, you know what I mean? So I was like, I got to do the videos. I can't be a wimp and do weekly updates or something, you know?
At least not the first round. Because because even Kevin who's done it plenty of times, has switched over to weekly, and I think like I said, if I do it again, I think it's going to have to be weekly. Yeah. But I have done it a couple times full time. So,
and I can see that, because it's like once you do it, it's kind of like why. Yeah. Because the videos, I agree, do take a lot of time. So it's kind of like if you just want to do the challenge again, and you know, and I've seen like Ox does it where he's like, I can't remember what he's doing, like on Facebook or on Instagram. He's like doing it different places each time, which is kind of funny. But it's hard to follow that shit. It's like it's hard to figure out where the hell he's at this time, you know?
Yeah, I know Scott O'Green, I think from I'd Rather Be Drawing, does it on Instagram TV, which is also a good platform. I mean, it's pretty much kind of like a YouTube on Instagram, so it's kind of made for that too. So that is another option. That
is neat. Yeah, there's I do think though that, like you said too, like when you don't have a, you know, like when you're just starting out, you know, like you're right, because like we've been doing videos for a long time, so it's like you kind of got an audience. But like when you're coming into it and you're like just dead cold and you haven't posted anything anywhere and nobody kind of knows who you are, that's one thing that's cool about the hundreds, is because it's like there's a club of people there that, you know, can be the initial little bit of a spark that'll make a fire, you know, later on. You know what I mean? It's like there's a few people that'll come and watch and comment and talk to you and be on your side. You know what I mean? And I think that's neat.
Yeah, and I think especially with comics, it's an isolated endeavor. Doing comics, it's you and your art table for very long periods of time, working on something that is a kind of risk investment and can be kind of, you know, especially your first go at it or whatever, it can be pretty like hard and kind of disappointing, because you might have these expectations of what you're going to be as a cartoonist, and then you start like I was talking about with Pandora's Box, you like open Pandora's Box and start doing comics, and you're like, oh crap, I really don't know paneling. And then it's like, oh, okay, now I'm getting paneling, but I'm figuring out this word balloon thing because that's a little harder than it looks. And you start kind of figuring these things out. And I think pre the hundreds, it's like you would be kind of making it in a vacuum. And so it's really easy to kind of let that daily habit that's so necessary to get any progress on these things done.
Yeah.
So the hundreds just kind of like, for me even, I had a daily habit, but it really shocked me like how much I would kind of let myself like, well, you know, it's Sunday, so you know, that kind of thing. Yeah. And it really kicked me into gear with that. And then like I said, it also provides like some encouragement, you know, while you're going through this process of doing it, because there's all these people who've done it or are doing it. And so it is really, I think, important to kind of have some kind of community around you while you're doing that stuff, you know, of people who aren't going to like naysay it or, try to crush it, because that's another thing that happens, once you start doing your own projects. You're going to have like people come out of the woodwork. Like Jeff, when you were talking about that, I was like, I don't know. I'm a big fan of that War of Art book,
Yeah.
And one of the things it talks about is the resistance that happens when you start working on like writing your own stuff. And so it's like, to me, when you were describing kind of clients coming out of the woodwork who never were giving you a hard time before, who are suddenly like, dude, like, where's my paintings? Like, you know what I mean? Like that's gonna, like that kind of thing is inevitably gonna happen when you start doing stuff. Like everything is gonna come out of nowhere to try to get you away from doing that thing.
Yeah.
And so
absolutely.
It's so cool to have a community. At least for me, it's been so exciting to have a community of people who are like pro comics and pro getting this stuff done, because it's, I don't know, to me it's encouraging, and it's also encouraging to watch. Like I've been following your hundreds and just have been mystified by the fact that you've been consistent with the videos, that you've done like that you're painting a comic book and you're doing it and you haven't like let the quality suffer, I don't know. It's just, it's cool. It's cool to see, and it's inspiring. It makes me want to get my book done,
Yeah, I can't wait to see your book gets done. I'm gonna love that for sure. Yeah, it's weird. It's like you said, that resistance. When you first said that, I thought from a person, which was like like somebody's coming out, kind of attacking you over the hundreds. I was like, that's pretty harsh, but I know what you mean. It's like like especially when you're on your own, it's like any freaking stupid thing that goes wrong, the car breaks down, or you know what I mean?
Oh,
you're
yeah.
short on rent, you kind of blame that on your comic, like, oh, if I wasn't in that comic, But one thing that's nice, like when you're doing the hundreds, there is something about that, that social, like people are watching you now. It's like, if you're gonna fail, you gotta fail in front of everybody. And that's definitely a motivator for me. I mean, there's definitely nights where I was like, I don't want to do a video, but then God, they're gonna know it's screwing around. So it's a good deal. I think yeah. You're trying to do comics, yeah. It's and you're having trouble. Like some people just don't have trouble, I guess. But one thing, like with me though, is like I should ask you this, Josh, because you do a webcomic also. And I was putting up the Berserkonaut as a webcomic till about page like 19, I think. And then I kind of was close enough to the end, and I was really already thinking IndieGoGo. So I just kind of was like, I don't have time for that. You know what I mean? And I just was like charging ahead, just painting and painting and painting. And then when, this thing funds and I got to put all the files together, I found it really hard to like write those last pages, especially when I had like so many to do, to kind of letter them, put them all together. It just was like, it was hard for me to do it that way. And I don't know. I'm thinking maybe about starting the webcomic back up, just so that it forces me to like, do the dialogue, get all the pages ready, so that by the time I get to the end of the book's done, because it's like a lot to go back and have to letter, and especially the way I was doing it, where I was painting different panels and putting them together.
Yeah. I would recommend it. Like, it also just kind of breaks up the workload so you don't burn out, like for me, because like part of why I've designed it the way I'm doing it is I don't like batching all my thumbnails into one go, because then I'm stuck in doing final art for like, ever, or thumbnails forever. And I get really bored really easily. So to me, like having that switch up of doing thumbnails and then from thumbnails kind of working to pencils, and pencils to inks, and having that kind of repetition of this whole workflow where it's like, one of the first things I do is like lay out the type and stuff like that. It's like I have this kind of workflow that's mixed up in a variety, so that basically I don't have to like batch do anything. Like for instance, like letter an entire book, which to me would just get really monotonous, And it's like, so that's why I do it the way I do it. And then part of why I do the webcomic too is just it serves a similar function because it's not like I'm building a mass audience with my webcomic. It's a slow roll. It's like a chance. It's kind of like doing YouTube videos where I'm like, maybe I can build a little bit of an audience before this thing's done.
Yeah.
But more importantly, it's just like it's a way for me to socially hold myself accountable, because it's like I have a thing where if I haven't posted progress on my comic on Instagram on a daily basis, I go to bed feeling like I failed that day, which may not be healthy, but that's just the way I am. I'm like, I want to have that post every day. And similarly, like my webcomic, I want it to post every week. And so it's just a way to keep myself motivated and keep the thing organized too, because I've caught myself going to my own webcomic pages to be like, what was it like that character wearing on page 2? Because now I'm forgetting which side was this guy's thing on, or what, like,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Does that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done that like a lot with my comic too. It is easy to kind of just go through your comic if it's on the web to kind of go back and make sure you got the arm on the right side and all that kind of stuff.
I remember you talking about that, Jeff. I think everyone, unless you like set up and do all your model sheets in the beginning and all that stuff. But to me, I kind of think that's a bad idea, because like I like to kind of check as I go, because I still of the opinion that if you spend way too much time up front trying to figure all that stuff out, you're just never going to get to starting. So, but.
Yeah, and that was a lot of my problem for years. I was like the perfectionist. I was the planner. I was the world builder guy that just was always planning and never doing. Yeah,
that was me too. Before the book I was working on, before Young and the Dead, I redid the first 4 pages probably 4 or 5 times, and but it never got done. Those I can still look at those pictures, go back and look at those pages, and like, oh, those are pretty good. They might even be technically more proficient than what I'm doing now. It's a style, it's a different style, but this is what I'm doing now is a lot more loose and everything. But that stuff back then, I mean, I put my old stuff up, and like I get a lot of response, like in some of my videos. Oh man, that looks awesome, but it's not done. Right. So I kind of had to say, I'm going to have to do this a little differently, and so. But but you had mentioned IndieGoGo, so let's talk a little bit about you finished the book, and you're going to fund it. Now you've run successful Kickstarters before, so
one successful Kickstarter.
Okay, but that was wasn't that the last crowdfunding thing you've done was successful, right?
Yeah, I did one for the art book, which was successful. Right. Before that, I did one for the stop motion, and that was unsuccessful. Right. So, but I mean, you did kind of build an audience. So, I mean, for me, when I do my next crowdfunding thing, it's probably going to be Kickstarter, because I feel like I've funded once on there. So, and again, you're kind of doing something different. So maybe it's a different story, and I know there's a lot of activity, and there's some big projects like funding, like big time on IndieGoGo. But I think and you maybe realized this when you jumped in, that it wasn't as easy as you thought, and eventually it worked out. But so I kind of want to get your whole mindset of, if you've run a successful Kickstarter, you've got all those names, all those stuff in your campaign, why take the risk and switch to a different campaign, a different platform? That's what my wife said. And it was definitely something I was worried about for sure. But the one thing I think that kind of swayed me was that it was a comic book this time, and it wasn't another art book. Because you're right. I think if I came back with another art book to Kickstarter, it would have got funded like that. It'd been no problem, But going to IndieGoGo, going to a different place, and plus, I really hadn't, though I did comics here and there, I hadn't really dedicated that much time to it. I pretty much had the beginning of like the 100 days, and then bam, here I've got an IndieGoGo going. So you're right. I mean, like in the beginning, it was hard. It was limping along right to the end almost, because I think it was like about 4 days before that it started to come back up again.
I was worried that you weren't going to fund, and I don't know. I'm kind of wondering what the mindset was. If you were just desperate and reaching out to people like Doug Tenaple and stuff like that, because I think that might have been what kind of started the
Absolutely.
uptake. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I was at that point where it's not going to fund, and I kind of just accepted it. And I was like starting to think, okay, well, what's the step two? You know, go to Kablam and, you know, just do a little print on demand thing, get the next one done, you know, just limp it along and try to get it to fund on maybe the next one, you know, or something. But I don't know, there was different people like really, you know, cheering me on from, you know, my group of people. Like Jim Redinger, I remember he like got on Facebook one day and just decided to rant and rave at me in the messages, like while I was sleeping. So I woke up to this long message about I need to get my ass in the gear, pick myself up, and fucking get something done. You know? And you kind of read that, and you're like, well, I'm trying, but you know, nothing. You know, it's like the audience has to come, right? It's like if the audience isn't coming, they're not coming. But it did light a fire under me, and it you know, it kind of like got me thinking, like, you know, just what can I do? Because you're right. I mean, when I went to IndieGoGo, a lot of it was because of, you know, I don't know if I should say it. Should I say the CG comics game word? All right. Wait, is that like a rumble? It's kind of like that Jurassic Park rumble that happens whenever you mention it. They start coming, dude. But anyway, yeah, it's like, you know, I was totally noticing that happening, and, you know, just being like, you know, $500,000, you know, Ethan Van Sciver, and, you know, they all were just killing it over there. And so I'm like, you know, I've said it before, but it's just like, I was just looking at that thinking, well, if there's a rush, if there's like this mad rush of people to IndieGoGo that are all like into comics, man, maybe I should just go try it over there. You know, this could be something that, you know, they're there, maybe they'll see my thing, you know what I mean? But it wasn't working. But it totally wasn't working. Nobody was seeing my thing. And I just you know, I saw Doug TenNapel, you know, put his IndieGoGo up. I kind of knew him. He had shared my like stop motion Kickstarter from like years ago. You know what I mean? He had like shared it on Facebook, and I said, hey, thanks, or something like that on Facebook. So it was kind of like we were friends and we had messaged at one time, you know? And so I thought, well, I'll just talk to him. I'll just see if he'll come on. And like, yeah, him coming on right off the bat, you know, he's obviously got a lot bigger audience than me. That gave me a little pump, you know, that got me a few $100 for sure. And then I just thought, you know, I'll just try talking to some of these guys in Comicsgate, because, you know, I just wasn't in there, you know. It's like I think a lot of the way I look at things is like real similar to the way they look at things, but I just didn't know anybody. I didn't, you know, talk to anybody on there. And so that's when I reached out to the Edwin Boyette, and just, you know, I saw he was like doing interviews with different guys from Comicsgate, smaller creators. And I just thought, you know, I'll just ask him, what's it hurt to ask? And he was like, yeah, come on tonight, you know. And then that was like, he gave me like about $1,000 that first, you know, night, just being on that show, and that got the ball rolling. So I don't know if it would have funded if I wouldn't have done that, you know. Towards the end, I did see people that I knew that came in late, but it's like, and maybe I could have got to 3,500 because I actually went to 5, so I overfunded. But I don't know if it would have, you know.
Yeah, and I think I mean, looking at all those successful projects on there, and you probably went into it the same way, that people are just funding, you know, like crazy on IndieGoGo. But I still think you kind of have to be in that tribe. And
yeah,
for me, it's like, to me, and I don't want to get too much into this, but I kind of see like Comicsgate and like whatever the anti-Comicsgate, Comics Pros or whatever. To me, right. I kind of see them as two sides of the same extreme coin. It seems just like, you know, oh, you're a Nazi or you're an SJW, and it's just, to me, it's the same thing, but just on opposite ends of the spectrum. Right. So I don't really want to get embroiled in all that kind of stuff. But you know, and I
don't blame you. I honestly don't blame anybody that doesn't want to get into it, because, like, you know, just the few videos I've made and stuff like that, it is pretty crazy. You know, it's just weird. You know, you get it from both sides. Like they show up to fight with the people that show up to troll you, and it's just weird. The comments go like crazy. And so
I think, you know, to me, again, this isn't a Comicsgate thing or whatever, but because I know Sienkiewicz put out that thing and it caused a lot of stuff. But yeah. I heard that like recently that I think it was somebody from Comicsgate reached out to him and said, we're not all bad guys, and just instead of just slamming him, talk to him. And I think Sienkiewicz said, I forgot the exact words, but he said, thanks for reaching out, and this is what we need to talk about this kind of stuff. And he said something to the effect, which I really loved, was like an olive branch makes a great what do you say? A ink brush or something? I forgot exactly what it was, but something to the effect of comics. So I just think I think in a lot of ways, I mean, it's just all this. I think if people just sat down and like actually had a civil conversation, I think a lot of these people might find that, in some ways they're kind of on this, they want the same thing. They want what's best for comics, But anyway, that's just my opinion. But anyway,
yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, my take on it is kind of like I'm in a very similar boat. Like I don't particularly like the extremes on either end, and I don't necessarily see them as both equivalent. But I don't like. To me, I think if you start like defining people by like an acronym, like there's a problem. Like because to me, like I've never met a person who like fits an acronym or becomes like like lives up to a stereotype or a cliche, and so like to me I want cartoonists to just be for cartoonists, and I don't really care what end of the political spectrum they land on. Like I know like Jeff, you and I probably are on like pretty polar opposite like political viewpoints, but like the thing I like about you is you're a good dude and you care about people and you care about comics. And like to me that should be the common thread between everybody. So to me it's like I think when people are kind of standing in a club and asking you to pick a side or something, like to me the hairs on my neck stand up a little bit, because like and I think this is a common thread, honestly, with a lot of people who are in any like group. We're in comics, so most of us were geeks growing up. And to me, it's like, I don't like that bully thing of like, like, oh, well, you're either on the bench or on the team kind of thing. I'm like, no, I just don't. Like, to me, I've never been a big sports guy. I'm not like, that's just not the way I roll. I'm for comics, and I'm for people making comics and saying what they want in those comics, and like regardless of their political viewpoints, and I just think about the guys I admire, like growing up, like it's like I don't have to agree with everybody to like their comics, like
right.
And so like that's, to me, that's the thing. Like I just want to see good comics and see good art, and honestly, I'd like to see the comics community get along. Like I know that might be kind of corny, but it's it feels weird that people aren't getting along, and it feels weird to me also to see people demeaning a movement that, like, Jeff, I know you're kind of supportive of, and like to me, it's like, well, like that makes me second guess like my maybe prejudgments about the movement, because I'm like, well, it can't be that bad because Jeff's in it and Jeff's a good dude. So like to me, like that probably means there's probably other people in that movement who aren't, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it does. So, me and like my friend Sean were just talking about it today, and we were talking about like say like the indie comics movement of say like the 90s, not just necessarily like Image Comics, but like Dave Sim and the Strangers in Paradise guy, and a lot of the black and white books that were coming out around that time, Bone and stuff. And it's like there was sort of this indie comics revolt happening that I loved back then. You know what I mean? And I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to self-publish and be one of those guys. And a lot of Comicsgate, it's like that's what I see in it, but then it's also there's so much political type stuff that comes in there, that, I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of times I just don't care about, you know what I mean? Because I am kind of the guy who's like, it's, a lot of times I just don't care like what people's politics are and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know how people feel about that, but it's like the indie comic side of it is like what I like, and I want there to be that revolution. And so it's like I want to join up with Comicsgate and light the torch and go fight, but I'm also like, I don't know if this is the revolution that I can take to the hilt, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
because there's a lot of other stuff going along here. So yeah, it's a really hard it's a hard thing to figure out sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think I'd encourage people out there, before you make judgments about anyone or any kind of thing, to like pause and just kind of be like, yeah, is this a hill worth dying on? Like, to me, a hill worth dying on is comics. Like, and like
indie comics, it is.
Like, indie comics is
yeah.
definitely a hill worth dying on. Political comics, like, dude, you know what? Like, welcome to art. Like, people have been political in art for years, and so, like, yeah, sure, if you're an artist and you want politics in your art or out of your art, make some stuff, make cool stuff, make cool projects, get them funded, and start looking outside of like the mainstream. Like, and if you haven't yet, and you're a guy who's like all you've read or like Marvel and DC, like look outside of like your box, because there's Fantagraphics and there's Drawn and Quarterly, and there's there's a million indie publishers, and then there's you, and you could be the next indie publisher of your own work. So like, to me, it's like there's like, comics are big enough for everybody, and to me, like, that's what I'm for. I don't know if that makes sense. Scott,
I was going to say, well, first I'll say this big, just piggybacking off of what you said, and I've said it a million times before, but yeah, haters hate, creators create, and we should just be creating and not worry about all the hate and stuff. But yeah, Josh mentioned sports, and I'm not a big sports fan by any stretch of the imagination, but the one thing I will say about sports is, I mean, you can go in a bar, say if you're a Steelers fan or whatever, you see another guy with a Steelers shirt on or whatever, you guys can be like instantly friends because you're bonding over that. And you could have totally opposite political views and everything, but you still have a common ground. And I think that's what comics should be. If you're into comics, that should be the only thing, and not everyone loves the same comics, and that's fine. But there's so many comics out there. I mean, it's just, there's no short of awesome comics. And, and then some people say, well, I don't like what they're doing with this, but maybe other people do. Everyone's got a different opinion, but there's got to be something there that you like. And just the fact that it is comics, I think that's be the sort of the common ground there.
Yeah, and what Jeff you were saying about like Dave Sim and Jeff Smith, right there is a perfect example of two people who are politically diametrically opposed, and yet they both are brilliant cartoonists who did work that like really made like a huge impact on the independent comic scene. And like, I think it would have been a shame if at that time, like, Dave Sim had been like, Jeff Smith's terrible and I don't like his politics, and you know what I mean? Like, they both just made really good books. And Dave Sim made books that, like, I don't agree with everything Dave Sim believes, but man, Cerebrus is a beautifully done book. It's one of the most important books in indie comics. So is Bone. So like, to me, that's where I want us to be, is like, I'd like us to be in a world where Cerebrus and Bone can both exist. And we can just, try to like tip the hat to the people who are making those things, right. That to me, that's where it's at,
Totally. Yeah. Totally. I don't know. I feel like that was my, I think I said that same thing when I was talking about Jason Brubaker, because I noticed he started talking about Comicsgate. And like, I think when I started talking about Comicsgate and I was new to it, I was kind of saying the same thing. Yeah, let's just all get along. Let's just get along. But don't, what I mean? What happens is, you just start, they show up, what I mean? They show up and they start fighting you, it's just like, there is no get along. It seems like everybody's at war right now. And you're like, but what about what I just said? It's a weird thing, so.
Yeah, but you just have to realize that the people that are making a lot of the noise, not everyone in Comicsgate is a Nazi, and not everyone that, wants, other voices in comics is an SJW or whatever. It just, there's, I don't know, but again, I don't want to get too much into that, but you can't group everyone in a huge movement as all the same people, you know?
Absolutely.
So, but anyway, but yeah, so we touched on that. But again, so anyway, so you
we got it solved. Let's just leave
on.
Comicsgate there. We got it fixed, okay? We got it fixed.
We solved Comicsgate, everyone. All right. So
and I'm sure like anyone who was looking for content on that will just be really behaved and nice in the chats and in their comments.
All right. So you got the book. I mean, it was a struggle. It was down to the wire. You got the book funded, and it's continuing to fund and everything. And I hope now, do you know if there's something similar to the IndieGoGo on, was it on demand or what is it?
Yeah, IndieGoGo in demand.
Does Kickstarter have something like that? Do you know? I thought they did.
I don't know.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Anyway, I'm curious about that. But anyway, so the book is funded. Now, you've talked on your YouTube channel a number of times about your plan to get it into the comic book store, and you're really passionate about that. And to me, that's something I really haven't worried too much about. But hearing you talk about it, I'm like, well, maybe I should think about that, because I definitely want to support local comic book stores. But the whole thing with Diamond and everything, and I just think Diamond doesn't care a lick for indie comics. And I don't know if there's ways around that. And I know, like, if you're submitting to Diamond, I think you have to have basically you have to have most of the books done. And there's just a whole thing you have to go through. And if it doesn't make so many, they drop your book. And that's really hard for indie creators. So I'm curious kind of what your plans are, how you're going to get it into the comic store and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I just was like looking at the chat. I noticed Abe said, yeah, like the hundreds. Is that, I wonder if you meant that with the, like when we were talking about the hill to die on or whatever, you know, because I've always thought that like the hundreds, you know, I wish that they could become a group like Comicsgate, like, you know, the indie comics from the 90s, where, you know, it is, you know, this mass, you know, revolution, you know, taking like great comics all the way, you know.
Well, I know after all the stuff that went down with Peter Samedi, he was trying to get established just the hashtag of just Team Comics. And, you know, I don't know, because sometimes people were hashtagging Team Comics and also hashtagging Comicsgate, and then that's going to, you know, people on the left are going to be like, oh, that Team Comics means Comicsgate. It's just another thing. But I would like there to be just something that is totally apolitical, that's just all about comics. Yeah. And that's, you know, and that was what just was so heartbreaking about Peter, is that he's never said anything political at all. He's always just been about, you know, the love of comics, and he's got great ideas. And when we have him on the show in a couple of weeks, we'll talk to him about that. But and I've been a fan of Alternative for a while. I've got every single newsprint thing they put out, and this is before any controversy or anything. And I'll always be a fan because of what, you know, what they're trying to. He's doing some great things. Like, he's just got brilliant ideas on ways to change the industry for the better. So yeah, but I would love to see something like a Team Comics, or whether it's the hundreds, do something like that, or something that is just positive. But unfortunately, a lot of times you could start that way and people kind of co-opt it into something else, and then it goes out. But you know, who knows? It's just a weird thing.
Right. Yeah, I didn't mean to side rail it or derail it or whatever. But you know, it's like, I mean, it is. It's something. I think it just as an artist, and I think like we're all three way more artists than anything else, you know what I mean? And it's just like, that's what you're searching for as an artist, you know. You want that, you know, side to be on and stuff like that. But anyway, back to what you were saying. I've kind of lost my train of thought a little bit. I'm sorry.
Just getting into the comic book stores, I guess, is what we're.
Oh, right, getting into the comic book stores, yeah, which is like, it's my own thing that I've kind of it's just been. You know, it's funny. It's like ever since I started thinking about, you know, getting back into the comic shops or doing the comic, first off, just making the comic, then I just started, you know, this idea came into my head, man. It's like, I'd like to see it up at the comic shop. You know, I'm doing comics. Why don't I go up to the comic shop? And so, you know, I started buying comics again and going up to the shop every week, just seeing what's there. And the more I've been hanging around, I'm like, no, wait, comics is still here. This is like a thing that's happening. I might have stepped back out of it, but there's like a ton of people buying comics. There's like a ton of shops everywhere. And it might not be the most booming market of like all time, but it's like it's still a niche market that's still healthy and it's still there. And then I was like, there's all of these, it's like how many like web comics and indie comics and all these Kickstarters and even like Brubaker, you don't see their books in the shops. It's like this whole thing happening,
Right.
but nobody's taking it to the shops. So yeah, it's become like a big passion of mine to get like my book into the shops and to figure out how to make that work now, because like everything that you said about Diamond is like true. I think that Diamond's like super, they're not indie friendly for sure, and they have minimums that you have to hit, or like you said, they'll cancel your book. And with me, I still want to do it, even though like from the numbers I've heard, like that people have like kind of told me, expect numbers like 800 to 1,000 on your first book, which if you're taking a color comic to Diamond and you're going to try to like, and you're going to get numbers of 1,000 back, you're going to lose your ass on the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. If you go to print at 1,000 copies or something, your copies are going to be like, I mean, I really never looked up what 1,000 would be, but it'd probably be like $1.50 a copy or something. And so then, when Diamond, you got to give it Diamond a 60%, or is it 60 or 70? Now I'm forgetting, but it's somewhere around there.
Yeah, it's a huge percent discount that you're kind of giving them. And then the like, cause I had Numb through Diamond.
Okay.
And so what's going to get you is that and shipping, because you have to ship like thousands of books. So I think in my case, I think it was like maybe 1,500. And that was pretty good at the time, but that was mostly because there was a different comic company called Alternative Comics that was run by this guy, Jeff Mason, who let me list under his banner. So it's like I got the benefit of like having people who already were ordering books from Alternative Comics order my book, even though it was self-published, because he just allowed me to use that to distro it. But the thing that really ate into the cost wasn't just that, because they're gonna cut into your profit on the book. But then if you take the shipping cost just to get all those books to the Diamond centers, because there's like, and it might have changed because that was like 10 years ago, but there's like 4 or 5 different warehouses. So if you get like 50 orders in Florida, you have to ship to one warehouse that's going to hit like Florida and that side of the country. And there's different ones throughout the US, and then there's an international one too. So it's like the shipping is what really ate into it. And definitely, had I not, like, that was back when I was like funded by that grant, but if I hadn't had that grant, I would have lost a lot of money on the Diamond thing. But it did have the benefit of like, when you get a book in the stores, then people take you more seriously, and they order more online. Like, the weird thing is, more people will buy from you directly because they saw your stuff in the store. It's like this weird psychological thing that people do when they see something in a store. It's like, oh, he's next to Spider-Man. You know what I mean? It's like it groups you with comics that are all made the same way. Like, it's not like Marvel has some special access to like paper that we don't have access to. You know, they're made on the same kind of paper, same kind of artists. Like, most of the artists who get into mainstream comics did indies for years. So it's like, but it's weird. It does group you with those people. So I think it's a smart move. And I think it's cool that you allotted an extra amount in your, I thought that was a smart idea to do a bulk run so you can get it at a low enough cost to send out. Because I think that'll, especially if it's going to be a series, like, that's going to get you some eyeballs on the work that you couldn't otherwise reach, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was my thinking. And like everything you said there about like Diamond, like 100% true. You got to ship to all these different places. With the printer I'm going through, the one thing that's kind of cool is they're going to like ship to me for free. So it's like, I just have to ship there. So that's like my shipping beyond just like the shipping, of course, to the IndieGoGo people, backed.
Awesome.
the more I thought about it was, it's like we do live like in this like modern age, like when my buddy Sean Tiffany like published his book, published his comic. He did a self-published comic called Exit Six back in like the 90s. And, he got a couple issues out. And then at some point, he was like selling like that, like 1,000, like 1,200 books. At some point, he just kind of got to the point where it's like, I can't afford to print anymore. So he was like done, he had to kind of give up on it. But, like now we have like crowdfunding, you know what I mean? And it's like, we've got all these people like crowdfunding their books, and, they crowdfund, they sell to the people that they back the book. So they're sort of like selling directly to their customers. And then they stop. They just take the money there, and then they stop. But I was thinking, like, if you crowdfund it and you can pay for the print run, you know what I mean? You back those books off. Like, I'm printing 5,000 books, so my comics are going to cost 54 cents a comic. But like all that is paid for. So they're really not costing me 54 cents a comic now. Now they're costing me $0.
Yeah.
So when I go to Diamond, you know what I mean? And I get like that 1,000 orders. It's like it's like it doesn't even matter what the comics cost anymore. Like that money I get back from Diamond is just going to be profit.
No, it's totally true. Yeah.
Beyond the shipping. And so I just started to think like this is like a real way. You could anybody can like take their comics to the comic shops as long as you can meet Diamond's orders. Then you could publish the Diamonds. You could have your comics sitting there next to like a Marvel Comics and all that.
Yeah, and I mean that is what Dave Sim and Jeff Smith did back in the day. When Jeff Smith was doing cartoon books, like that's him and his wife, like they got a listing in Diamond, and like that's how they hit those sales numbers. Now keep in mind that's back when like indies would sell like 40,000 copies, but still, that's it has been done, so it's not like it's impossible. It has been done. Yeah.
And I think too, like, just I mean I hope that I can pull it off, because like it's like all I've done so far is I've just sort of done the first issue. I haven't got any word back from Diamond whether they've even accepted the comic. I imagine they will, but it's still a ways away. But really and truly, it's like I only have money for the first issue. Like I come back with the second issue, I could get caught. I could go to IndieGoGo again. I could like not get funded, and it could kill it. You know what I mean? But I think it's just worth the chance. You know what I mean? It's like you can just you can always sell books off your site. You know what I mean? You can do that like any day.
Yeah. And
you can even really crowdfund anytime. You know what I mean? If you crowdfund and you do print on demand and you crowdfund, 5 books, well, you've made money on those 5 books. It's not like you're losing money at any time when you crowdfund. So it just made sense to me. I mean, like the whole name Kickstarter, it's like kickstart your business. It's like, well, why not kickstart a comic book business? I mean, really like invest that money back into like something that could possibly get bigger.
Yeah, I think also, so one of the things that, some of the problems you might run into is that, unfortunately, and it's not necessarily that some of the comic stores aren't like indie friendly, but like, so the comic book store closest to me, they don't carry a lot of indie books, and it kind of,
Right.
It sucks for me because that's pretty much all I buy are indie books. But they do carry Alterna, but I think the only reason they do is because one of the Alterna artists is like local here, so he does store signings and stuff. But his things is just like they're hard to sell. I can't.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But and I don't know how true that is because I know a lot of other comic book stores out here are very indie friendly and do sell all that stuff. So it could just be a mindset or whatever. But one of the things, and I don't know how much of Peter Cimenti's videos you've seen, but he gives a very awesome tip for indie creators. And if you've ever looked in the back of any of the Alterna books, pick up whatever the newest issue of an Alterna book is. Towards the end, they have a list of all the comic book stores that carry Alterna. And Peter says, these are people that carry indie comics. So you have these stores right here. Yeah.
I got it right here.
Right. Yeah. And if you look at the back of that, so that's the first place. If you can get it in Diamond, maybe send like a preview copy out to. And I don't know how well that works because of course you're paying for shipping or how that works. But I think purely as an advertising thing. So if what Josh is saying is true about if people, it kind of legitimizes your comics. But if they see those, and I think your comic, Jeff, is going to have a really good. I don't know it's not curb appeal, but what's the equivalent to something on the
appeal?
Yeah, because I mean, just the fully painted stuff and everything like that. Once they look into it, I think yours is kind of that one of those books where you look at it and you're like, oh, this looks interesting. Whereas sometimes some other books kind of come down to story and it's not as quite, I mean, you have to actually get into it. Whereas yours, you can look at it and say, this looks pretty awesome. I'm going to take a chance on it and I'm going to pick it up. So I think yours kind of has that appeal to it. So I think if you do get it on the shelves, I think that's, hopefully, I mean.
The other thing is like, you still have all the other tools in your tool belt still, just because, it's like, so when you're doing diamond, you're just expanding your tool belt. And if that works, cool. If not, like, you can try something else for the next issue. But it's like that at least can open up a dialogue and stuff. And, you can go that extra mile. Like, this is something I've been thinking about. I don't know if I'm going to list in diamond. I don't really even know if maybe I'll approach publishers. I'm not really sure right now. I know I'm going to print the book regardless. Yeah. But I do know that, like, one of the things, and I think I've talked about this with you before, but like one of the things I've been thinking about is doing more one-on-one interaction with stores, because comic shops, even the ones that, don't seem super indie friendly, a lot of the time those owners really love comics. And if you go in and have a one-on-one interaction with those people and you do a signing that maybe, like, at least in my experience with doing store signings, like 3 people show up sometimes, it's sometimes it's great. And sometimes it's like, you're just sitting in a comic shop for a day and like, it's boring, but like the point being, like, you do that, you meet the people, you make that contact, you make that connection. It's a small industry and that's going to get them to reorder. So it's like that kind of thing, which honestly comic companies should be doing anyway. Yeah. But unfortunately, they usually leave that on the creator anyway. So the point is, if you had a book out through Marvel, you'd still have to make the minimums. If you had a book out through Marvel, you'd still have to compete with the big existing properties. Yeah. If you had a book out through Marvel, you'd still have to go to stores and do one-on-one interactions and try to hustle. So the point being, like, to me, I don't see how you lose in that equation where like, and the beauty is because people supported you and backed you, you have that opportunity. And I'd really like, I also want to use that as an opportunity to say, like, that's why, like, people in the hundreds, and like on our channel, it's so cool that we're supportive of other creators and stuff, because that enables us to be able to do these kind of things. And like, if you love comics, like, and I've heard a million people on a million different channels and different viewpoints and stuff express this, but it's so true. If you love comics or you like a creator, like, buy their stuff and talk about it and go to stores and talk about it, because otherwise, like, what you love is not going to exist for a long time. You know what I mean? Like, so I think it's cool. And I think to me, I don't see that as being a negative thing, because I think you're still going to do the ground game. You're still going to, talk to the shops directly. I would recommend, like, and I'm sure you're already doing this, but maybe send out a good chunk for press too. Right. So, like, have a couple press copies that you send with, like, a little snippet about the book, and maybe target some stores. Like, you're in Colorado, man, target Mile High Comics, send them a personal copy, because they order a mass amount.
Yeah. That is one of the, things I think I talked about it on the IndieGoGo, but the shops that are in Alterna's little list there, I've just, been slowly, like, looking them up online, getting their addresses, adding them all to a bunch of labels. And I'm going to send a book to, like, every one of those shops. That'll be like another $1,000 to ship all that. But I just feel like it's worth it just to get some interest going, so that maybe they will order the thing strong. You know what I mean? So absolutely. And yeah, I agree. It's like going into shops is great if you can get to them and stuff. So
Yeah, and if you can like even make a little road trip and go to some of the comics in Colorado and just drop off a copy. I mean, I know Gazbot does that all the time whenever he goes out of town or whatever. I mean, he's a real gregarious guy, so he has no problem just going in like, hey, I got a comic or whatever. But for me, that would be a little harder. But I would do it. And like I said, at least here in Arizona, most of the comic book stores are super, indie friendly and everything. So, and I've at least talked to a lot of them, so I don't see that as an issue, getting my book in there. I just, for me, it was always like, I mean, I should really look at it as more like advertising, because the percentage you're getting from a book in a store is just like, you're not gonna get rich off of that with indie comics unless, for some reason you just have a runaway success or something.
But I think, sorry, Jeffrey, I don't want to cut you. Okay. So I think that there's like, and I remember, I think Peter Cimetti talked about this too on his channel. And this is something that, especially like working where I work as an art director and seeing what the sales teams do to the retail places that carry our stuff. Like they meet the retailers, they take them out to dinner, they kind of wine and dine the retailers, and the retailers in turn feel a connection and a loyalty to our company and order from us. And of course our quality has to be consistent. But to me, it's like, I don't see why comics have to be any different. Like I really do want to do that. Like I want to make relationships with these people that work comic shops, and are hustling this stuff, and not just limited to comic shops, like go to bookstores, meet the people who run these bookstores and stuff like that. Cause 80% of the problem isn't the art. Like Jeff, your problem is not going to be the art,
Right.
I don't think it's going to be the art or the story. Your problem is just going to be like, how do we get as many eyeballs on Berserkonaut as possible, because that's just going to expand the opportunity to find those readers who are going to dig what you do, So like, to me, I don't know, nothing's off the table. I would even like, something I'm even thinking about is like, should I make like a little pop-up display for the store? I mean, this is just stuff that I was thinking about. And it's like, even if I had a publisher, I'd think about that. Like,
right.
Cause maybe they wouldn't, but if you make a little pop-up display for the store, that maybe costs you like $20 to print. And they give you really a good location in the store because, hey, like Marvel hasn't come by and given us a pop-up display, but this local dude did. Like to me, that's all stuff that I'm starting to think about. And it's of course within the limit of time and budget and location, but still, it's like, I think we gotta, as indie creators, start thinking out of the box.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is, you say like within time, budget, and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, a lot of the budget, when you see guys, like Brubaker and stuff, be able to pull off like a $50,000, $60,000 Kickstarter, man, it's like, why not go after that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? You could afford to print stuff like that. When I was in Walmart the other day, I saw, DC has comics in Walmart, and they just, it's like 2 comics, and they have like a little cardboard kind of like slanted box that just says comics, and it just, and it's like hokey and cheap, but it's like, it totally fits on the shelf. It's like, it's getting comics back into like Walmarts. I mean, for Christ's sake, I love it. You know what I mean? It's like, I want more. I want, a whole line of those things,
I saw that too. And I don't know if I just had a better selection at the Walmart by my house, but there were 2 different displays, both DC. I wish Marvel would do it too. Yeah. But what was great was the price point was great too, because they were selling for like, I think $4.99.
Yeah,
but
that's
it wasn't a single issue. It was like a collection of like 4 comics. So when you look at that, it's pretty much what Alterna's doing. It's the price point is about the same as what Alterna's charging, where they're getting that low price point. And their stuff's on, I mean, they can afford to do their stuff on premium paper and everything like that and still sell it for that price. But I mean, if we can do that, because I just think that price, and it's hard for indies. Like, I mean, I'll admit my book I sell for $5. You know,
Yeah.
I'm an indie guy. I mean, I try to make it worth my while.
Yeah.
But if you can lower that price point and you can get kids, I mean, I think the key is just get kids into it. You need to get new readers, and they're already familiar with all these DC and Marvel characters. So if they go to, go see the latest, Aquaman movie or the latest Spider-Man movie or whatever, and there's a comic book on there, and then that's how I discovered books. And it wasn't necessarily, I mean, I was familiar, it was like, oh, I know who Super Friends are. I know who Batman is from the Adam West Batman. And I go into a 7-Eleven, and here's a comic book that has those characters in it,
Yeah.
And
I
then,
used to pick up copies of Spider-Man at like that, and at a man, this is gonna date me, but it was a Read More Books. Do you guys remember that?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, like back in Walden's books days.
Yeah, it was a chain that died, but anyhow, so like I mean, like I had like, comics were accessible everywhere, and like to me, my stuff isn't going to be targeting kids, but it's like it's going to be targeting readers, and it's like, and so like I'm really going to try to think outside of the box in the sense of like who I approach and how I approach it. But the one thing I really want to do is like try to approach it, regardless of whether I have a publisher or not, more like I would approach like if I were selling, a manufactured product, because that's what you're selling. And so like to me, it's like, dude, if you like, treat those retailers really well, and like you don't have to buy them dinner, because I think most retailers are in comics are going to know where you're coming from if you're an indie creator, Yeah. But it's like, but like maybe go out to lunch with them and talk to them and like establish a relationship, and maybe like help your local comic shop like plan events around your book. Like be like, okay, here's the thing, like you guys are having trouble with promotion, so why don't you let me do the hustle? Like I'll do a little of the legwork and fill the store with some people.
Yeah, if you can bring people in, you got to make it worth their while.
Yeah,
you can bring people into their store. Like even if you have to like bang on doors, like your best friends and stuff, and say, look, I'm doing this thing. I need your help. I need to come out and help support me and get people in the store. If you can start with that, if you can go and say, I can guarantee I can bring, at least 20 people in or whatever, or maybe more, I don't know. But if you can do that, I mean, and like I said, when they had the creator of the alternate comic Eden, Eric Hinson, I think. So he's a local creator. And I went in there when they first launched Eden #1, and like he brought, and I don't know who all was doing the promotion. I think the owner said a lot of it was from Eric, the creator. So, but he brought people in, and there was more people than I've ever seen in that store. So, I mean, but you can't just like when Josh said every time he's done a signing, 3 people show up. But now we have social media. We can promote that. We've got Facebook. We've got all that stuff. We can bring people in. And I think, of course, this is narrow. We can kind of do this just for our local shops, but maybe there's other things we can do nationally, whether it's sending out autograph copies or like something. I don't know. I mean, it's just time to get creative and come up with ideas that can help. Yeah,
I mean, when I was like younger and playing in bands a lot, which I'm starting to do again for fun, but the one, and I haven't done this yet with my band or whatever, but what we would do if we had a gig is we'd like go to the local mall, we'd like pass out flyers, we'd go to stores that attracted like the type of people, the clientele that would like our music, right? And we'd leave stacks of flyers for them. And like, I'm like, when was the last time one of us went into like a Hot Topic and dropped off flyers for a comic? Like should be happening. And it's ridiculous that we're not doing it, because like flyers are dirt cheap to print, and you can, at least locally, there's no reason that can't be happening with indie comics. And to me, I think if we, like all of us, like start thinking outside of the box and doing that kind of legwork, like I really think we can kind of, like the rising tide raises all ships or whatever. I think we can kind of bring at least for our own properties and stuff, I think we can bring a lot into it. So that's something I've been thinking about. I've even been thinking about like when my band plays at a bar, you know, we're playing at bars and there's an audience that has wallets, you know, and they're adults and they might like my comic, you know?
Yeah, I know. Why not?
That's
You
a
got
good idea.
a lot of places sell T-shirts
Yeah.
Yeah.
at those things, you know.
Another thing you can,
Yeah.
I think we can do that's not local. So Jeff, you get your comic book store. I mean, you get your book in certain stores across the country. You know which stores they're in and everything. You have a social media network. You can say, look, any of my fans, anyone that's following me in Charlotte, North Carolina, or wherever, just go down to this store. Maybe it's not too far from you. Buy it from the store. You know, instead of buying it from me, buy it from the store. Then you might not make as much off of it as they bought it directly, but you're supporting the local comic book store, and that comic book store just sold your comic. And if they've only got a couple copies, if you can get a couple people to go in there and buy it, they may order more. I mean, so but I think we just need to be a little more proactive. But I'm sure we have people that watch us all over the country, and if we can get some of those people to go in the store and pick up a copy or two, that might help too. You know?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, like what you were saying about the flyers, Josh. You know, I kind of remember, like, you know, I used to hang around with this guy Craig, and he was always like printing up little indie, like we used to call them ash cans, but they're kind of like an 8-page comic. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
You just get printed at Kinko's, and then, you know, he wouldn't even sell them. He'd go around like downtown Denver, he'd like drop them off at bars. He'd just drop them off at anywhere you could get somebody to take the things. You know what I mean? And then they'd just be out there in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That might be a little hard for you, because I think a lot of the allure of your book is going to be the cool colored painted covers, and to do that like color photocopies might not work, but
it kind of just made me think of, like, you know, just that, you know, I mean, I wouldn't even think to like go and like drop off flyers like anywhere now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like anything outside of like the comic shop, it just doesn't even cross your mind. It's kind of crazy that it's how it's changed, you know?
Yeah. And like, but to me, like even that kind of method, like, so what you could do is like, you know, have a black and white just ad for your comic that you leave at different alternative stores, you know, that are going to be into, because think about it, man, like the market for what you're doing is people, at least to me, you have an in already with people who really like the Judge Dredd kind of look, you know, and that style. And so that, like, immediately I can think of like 20 stores that would have a clientele like that. And you know, like, once again, I'm talking about a small scale, but I'm just thinking, this is just stuff I've been thinking for myself, where it's like, you don't have to print a whole ash can, but would it hurt to have that ad and just be like, you can buy this at this website? You know, it's like, I don't know. To me, I want to try all sorts of weird tactics like that and promote it like I would a band or like a product, because you know what I mean? Like, because to me, that's the big divide. That was my divide with illustration when I first started. It took me a while to start viewing myself as a business.
Yeah.
And once I did that, I started, you know, like invoicing people and keeping better records and getting paid a little better, because like, you know, like there's a reason like businesses send invoices and keep written records of transactions and stuff, because, you know, people can't screw you over when you do that. And, you know, so to me, it's like I've been thinking about that, like as an indie creator, like for me, I've never really approached that to the extent of like that I could, like as if it's a business. So that's just kind of what I was getting at, is like, I'm excited because I think like just you getting in Diamond is smart. Like, why not? You know, like to me, that does make sense. It almost makes me think like maybe I should take a run at Diamond. You know,
I definitely think
it's fun, man.
When I think back on, you know, like your comic kind of reminds me of, you know, Peep Show and what was that one guy, Seth, and you know what I'm talking about, Chester Brown's books. You know what I mean? Yummy Fur, and I mean, not content wise, but it's kind of similar. Autobiographical comics, black and white comics. I used to love to buy those. I used to buy those out of the comic shop here in Boulder. You know what I mean? That's where I got them. I didn't get them anywhere else. You know. And if they wouldn't have been there, I'd never seen them. I'd never found those things, you know. So I know it's a little different, you know. There wasn't no internet back then, but it's kind of the same thing. You know, I was gonna ask you guys one thing, because you know you were talking about Peter Simeti wanting to come on the show and not getting on here this time, but one of the things that I kind of struggled with before I even did the IndieGoGo was like the price of the book, and I ended up settling on, you know, like the $3.99 because it's just kind of like, it's like the cheapest comic you see in comic shops now, except for Alterna. You know what I mean? It's like you go in there and you look, everything's $3.99 or above.
Right.
And I really kind of wanted to emulate Alterna and do like a $1.50 comic or something like that. And like I said, you know, if I get 5,000 comics, I actually could do that, but I really wouldn't make any money through Diamond.
Right. Yeah.
And the biggest reason that kind of stopped me, and I don't know, maybe you guys can ask him whenever you guys get him on the show. But like, what? I mean, I didn't know what the reaction that the comic shops would have to that price. You know what I mean? Like, do comic books? Yeah, you know, because it's like all their books sell for like $3.99 or above, and then somebody comes along with a comic that sells for $1.50. Like, they make a lot less on that comic. Even if they sell a ton, they're still making a lot less on that comic than any other book that's comparable that's selling in that shop. You know, so I wonder like what their attitude is. You know, I know there's like comic shops really on his side. I've seen the, you know, cars come on his shows and stuff like that. But just in general, I just wonder, like, I mean, is there like comic shops out there that go like, well, it needs to be $3.99 because we need to make money, or like this is our business model, and if all the comics went down to $1.50, I mean, it'd take us out of business. You know what I mean?
I can tell you firsthand, at least from one situation, like my local comic book store. I mean, he kind of made that same point. It's just like, yeah, we don't make a whole lot of money off of these issues. Now they carry a lot of like Eden because the artist is local. But the thing is, I mean, and it's like Peter always says, it's all in volume. If people can, if when people go into a store, if they could afford to buy 50 comics for what you can get, you know, 10 comics for, then everyone's selling a lot more comics. But I mean, it's just so that, I mean, it's just a perspective. I mean, I think it depends on the store too, right? Because what if it's a loss leader? Like, because I see a lot of comic shops where the comics themselves are kind of like a loss leader, and then that's the loss leader that gets the person in the store who's going to buy the $50 statue, you know? Right.
Because I don't know like how much markup they make on like a $5 book, because consider like the cost of like printing on that glossy paper and stuff. It's like, even if you're buying in bulk, it's substantially more than it would be to do on newsprint.
Yeah. So let me tell you just to prove a point. Okay. I buy everything Alterna puts out. It doesn't matter, you know, it may not even be something that really appeals to me, but just to support them, I'll buy anything that they put out. Yeah. I'm not buying everything. I couldn't afford to. I can't even afford. I mean, you know, I set a pretty limited budget when it comes to what comics I buy. I just can't afford to buy all these different comics from people that are selling them for, you know, $4 or $5. It's just not cost effective. Now, if Marvel decided we're going to sell all our comics for $1.50, I'm going to be picking up a lot more Marvel comics, because the entry level to discover these new comics, and it's not just the one issue. If you buy a comic for $1.50, I mean, a comic that you normally might not pick up because it's just cost prohibitive, you pick that up for $1.50, you like it, you're going to come back for each issue. Yeah. Where, you know, a lot of times, like even with like stuff that I like I started with like when Marvel, you know, took back the Star Wars license, I started buying those, and after a while it's like, this is getting too much, I got to drop off. Yeah. But at $1.50, I'm going to keep continuing to buy those. So, you know,
and that's a good point, because I've been doing kind of the same thing when because I've been watching for the Alterna comics, and you know, the comic shop I go to, you know, they carry a few, and I just keep grabbing them as I see them. I never hesitate to pick those up. But there, you know, I've been looking around the shelves and just finding what I want, but it is limited. You know what I mean? It isn't like I buy everything that I think looks cool. It's like I buy like, you know, 3 comics and then I call it good, because don't want to blow, $25 on comics every week or something.
Right. Yeah. And again, and Josh had mentioned loss leaders. Like if you can get your book in, if you can set a lower price point, and again, like I said, mine's not a low, mine's pretty much the average price point. But if you can bring that price point down, you can get people if you can get them to purchase your comic book, and then maybe in your own comic book, put an ad for your art prints or whatever else you're selling. If you're selling T-shirts or whatever else, if you can convert somebody that way, maybe you can sell them on some of the other stuff. Because like me, I've got tons of stuff in my store that aren't comics related. I'm going to be doing some stuff that's going to hopefully tie everything into comics, because that's where the bulk of my audience is. But it's still, I've got all this other stuff. If I was to put out my book, and if I was to put an ad in it, Mad Science Supplies, like the old mail away stuff, get your X-ray glasses, all that stuff in the back, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm designing that kind of an ad for that stuff. But then you get people to order that.
Glasses, dude.
What's that?
You make them the X-ray glasses, dude.
I've looked at them. I'm trying to find a way, if I can get them in bulk, and if there's a way I can figure out how to do them myself, I'd definitely love to do those X-ray glasses, but I haven't figured that one out yet. But anyway, so I mean, you can, like Josh was saying, if you can get them in there, buy comics and then sell them on the statue. But if you have other stuff other than comics, because it's hard to make money at comics, that's why that's not all I do. But if I can sell my comic and get people to order other stuff in there, I think that's a way to go. And I know we're kind of going a little long, but there was some great stuff, some suggestions in the chat that I wanted to kind of let me see. So Jibrin Redinger says, what about indie comics ads and other indie comics books? And yeah, I mean, Alternative's ads and their books are like dirt cheap. I mean, I think for a full ad, it's like $100 but you can get a quarter page ad for like 25. Now that might go up now that they're like, people are starting to buy like 10,000 ish, their last order was like 10,000 because of all this drama, and people came, and I'll say it pretty much was the Comicsgate people that came by and kind of, started taking notice and stuff. But so maybe that ad might go up. So if you're thinking about advertising your comics, you might want to jump in on some of those really cheap ads, because the readership is what makes the more readers you get, the more you can charge for ads. So,
yeah, that's a good idea. I didn't even know that they were that cheap.
Oh yeah, they're cheap. So yeah, I would definitely, I would call like Peter probably, or send him an email or whatever, find whatever that ad. I don't know if you've ever ordered anything from his online store, but I've got a postcard that says, advertise in Alterna Comics. So yeah, I would, I'd get an ad in one of the Alterna Comics, especially now. If you can get it in now when they're selling all these things before he raises the price on those things, I would definitely do that, Jeff.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then there are some other ideas too about, sending your postcards out to some of the comic book stores, because you can send a postcard a little bit cheap, a lot cheaper than you can, but send them to the stores,
That postcard would totally sell books.
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
I am planning on doing that, but I'm planning on doing like books first and then follow up with postcards. But yeah, I want them to see the book right off the bat. So I want to give it the best possible shot to order those number ones and stuff. So
that's awesome. That's so exciting, man. And I think like the thing that, like, if there's anything kind of commonly kind of tying this all together, it seems like there's a thread of like really, I mean, we're getting into indie comics, which is a risk. It's a huge risk getting into comics in general, because comics are not like the best-selling items on the planet, So it's a risky endeavor just to make it, to spend the time to make it, to put it out there and run an IndieGoGo or a Kickstarter. It's like, once you've gone that far and you've taken that many risks and you've succeeded, it does seem like silly to kind of stop at like Diamond, where you're like, yeah, but that's hard. Well, it's hard getting it funded. It's hard getting a lot of stuff through. So I think that's really exciting, because like, once again, the worst that can happen is it doesn't happen, or it does and then it doesn't work. But what time does an artist ever exist where that's not always the risk? Like, there's always risks to art, and if you're doing art without risk, then I don't know, it's probably just not getting to people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
if
I think,
if it falls apart, I mean, there's always, like everybody always goes, well, you can go look for a publisher, or you can blah, 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 all these easier ways to do it. You can always do that after. You
Mhm.
fail here, if you've got a couple issues out, that's going to impress a publisher more than just you coming to them cold with like part of a story or something. So.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, like you meet a lot of publishers too, like through conventions and stuff.
Absolutely.
So it's like, I think just hustling your book, like there's no better sign you could give a publisher than showing them that you can hustle and sell.
Yeah.
Because if you can't hustle or sell your book and you're the best artist in the world, like I said, if you're on Marvel, you're still, and let's say it's your own property, you're still competing with all their successes. And, so like, if you're the head guy or a senior editor somewhere, you're probably looking for brilliant art, but you're probably also really wanting to see people who can sell and can do customer service. And, so yeah, I mean, to me, there's not really a loss in that situation. I think that sounds like a fun experiment and a fun possibility, like the possibilities of success are enticing enough to where I think it's worth doing,
Yeah.
That's cool. That's exciting, man.
Yeah, so we'll probably wrap it up, but I just wanted to address a couple things in the chat. So Samurai Ox says, but you're saying that if you pick up 4 alternate titles every quarter, that's only $5 compared to just one major title. I think $1.50 price point, you couldn't be making any money with shipping and print. And then the Almighty Jack says that Peter is making money off of $1.50 comics, which he definitely is. And again, it's the volume, and it's hard for now. Alterna is an indie creator, but I mean they've built up to a point where they kind of started this thing and they've got momentum going. Now for us, if it's just one creator, I'm not, most of us aren't publishers. We're like one person creating one book. And I think with something like that, I think people understand that we're indie, like super indie creators, and that, we're going to need to charge a little more for our books. But somebody like, I still think what Alterna's doing is great. And I think if like Marvel or DC would take notice of this, and Marvel or DC, they could print on premium paper and still charge $1.50. Now, maybe because there's also, paying the artist and other things like that. So there's more than just the price of the comic and what you're making off of it. But I mean, they can get these big print runs. I mean, you see it right now. Like I said, the DC books in Walmart are $5 for a collection. They're the same price as the single issue for 5 stories. So they can do it,
I'd love to see. I mean, to me, like those are the guys that really could, they could bring comics back, like to Walmart. They could put them in the grocery stores. They could put them on the newsstands. That they would be back. Yeah. And they could make it work because they have like the massive print runs, and like, man, they'd really have massive print runs if they were actually going through newsstand distributors and stuff. But I don't know. They seem to be going in the opposite direction of that. They seem to be like pushing the price higher and higher. Yeah. And I kind of think it makes it more, they're pushing like towards the collector market, and that kind of sucks for the next generation of kids that want to read comics.
And there's probably a lot of people that don't want to see everything on newsprint. I mean, there's, but that's kind of what's cool about what Alterna does is they're single issues in newsprint, but then they'll put it out as a trade and it's on premium paper. So you get the best of both worlds, and you're not trade waiting because it's the same price for buying all the single issues it is for the trade, or maybe even less. So you're not like, I'm just going to wait for the trade to come out. You can do like one or both, going to do the same. So yeah, I mean, I would love just to see more stuff out there in other places other than comic stores, because it's going to bring people into comic stores and they can become collectors. But I think you need to bring in some of these people that maybe don't even know that comics are around anymore, or like people that see all these Marvel movies. And the kids, but it could be anyone, even adults that I didn't know they still made comics. I'm going to pick one up and read it. And so
Although I do want to point out like one thing that always gets lost in this conversation that's like Marvel and DC should do this and stuff like that. It's like, or comics need to improve their sales and stuff. We can't forget the huge headway that's happened in the last few years in the book trade. Like this is something I used to talk about as a nerd who'd go to comic book stores and I'd be like, if only these things were in bookstores,
Right.
like people, it would catch on. It would be huge. These are books. And I remember like reading Watchmen in particular. Like this was like one of the first books I read where I was like, this is like a book. Like people should view this as like literature. And that is happening like currently. Like there are librarians advocating for comic books. There are like I go to buy my kid's book and there's a whole section of graphic novels for children. And like that's huge headway. And that's spearheaded by like stores and companies outside of Marvel and DC. Like there's First Second, there's massive, there's Top Shelf, there's massive like indie publishers who've been advocating to get not just in the comic shop, but start getting in accessible areas where readers are. And so I think like, let's get back on the spinner racks. Let's get back in Walmart. Let's get single issues selling again. But like, let's also not like throw the baby out with the bathwater and forget like how good the trade paperback has been for comics. Like this is a huge thing. And like, that's got to happen too. Like we got to keep advocating to like get comics in libraries, in bookstores, get them viewed as literature. And we got to keep upping our game on our writing in our comics so that like, they can validly make that argument, where it's like, dude, this needs to be taught in schools. Like Mouse is taught in schools. That's required reading now. I want to see more of that too in comics, and so like, I do feel like sometimes with all the controversy online, like where, between publishers and stuff like that, I think a lot of people just kind of myopically focus on the big two and forget about like the Dave Sims and the Jeff Smiths of the world, like Jeff Smith's putting comics out through Scholastic,
Absolutely.
That's great. That like Scholastic never published comics when I was younger. So there is some really good stuff happening with comics too. You can look on the New York Times bestseller list and quite frequently graphic novels will appear on them. That's cool. That's where we need to get like as an industry. So let's get them back in, because can you imagine how high that tide would rise if we bring like single issues back to where they were?
There'd be tons more comics to go. And I agree with you. I've always said that, from back in the day, I was like, comics should be in bookstores, and now they are, and people like a lot of times kind of forget about like how cool that is, because I agree, like I remember like reading The Dark Knight and thinking that same thing. This should be on in any bookstore. Anybody who reads this book's going to be into this, not just like somebody who's into Batman. And that's happening. And then on top of that, I think what's cool about the bookstore stuff is that, that really is like a lot of indie comics there. You know what I mean? Like Bone, that's total indie comic. And it's as big as any Marvel comic, really, when you look at it from the bookstores, from the libraries, because it's in the library. It's in my kid's library. I saw it in there. So,
dude, Gene Yang just won the MacArthur Genius Grant, like Gene Yang, like an indie guy, like, American Born Chinese comes out. It's like it wins YALSA. It wins like all these, massive awards. And now it's, now he's getting the Genius Grant and he's a cartoonist. Like, so I just want to also keep people positive too, in the sense of like, let's not forget the headway we've made. We're living in a world where like cartoonists have won the Pulitzer. Now they've won the MacArthur Genius Award. Like we're starting to see cartoonists actually kind of recognized and stuff. So like to me, I think let's just keep positive momentum and then not forget the stuff that was working in comics, like the stuff we're talking about, like print them cheaply so that they're accessible to people. Get them in like, I want my son to grow up, in an era where he can like go to like, the local mini mart or something and there's a spinner rack. Like that would just be, that's a beautiful thing. We got to get the spinner racks back, but like it is really cool, like the headway we've made. And like, I do think sometimes that gets discounted, because I know even in like a lot of those discussions, they'll mention sales, but they're talking about single issue sales. They aren't talking about like collections. And so it's like, you know, like once again, sometimes those are the loss leader for the big trade.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
That's
I would
probably
love-
absolutely true. I'm sorry, Scott.
No,
But just like, you know, when you think about the graphic novels selling out of Barnes and Noble, like the Hellboy graphic novels, you know what I mean? I don't know that I've ever bought one out of a comic shop. I usually pick those up at the bookstores, you know? It's like, how many freaking Hellboys did they sell out of the bookstores that, you know, nobody knows about, you know, when they look at the comic book numbers?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Scott, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I would love to see like Marvel, you know, we're talking about the spinner racks, just do a newsprint line, a cheap line that they could sell, you know, because before we kind of had that in a way. I mean, in the 80s we had, you know, the newsprint, and then there was the deluxe, or what was the I don't know, like the epic comics.
Right.
Kind
Yeah,
of
the epic line.
had a line like their Shadow and stuff. They had more of the premium paper, so you can keep that, if you know, keep that and just see how they do, just to get people into comics. Put a separate line with just your big hitters, your Spider-Mans and your X-Men's and all that stuff. Just a separate line, and maybe it caters more towards kids. But not super, you know, not that it's going to turn like adults off or whatever. But get those get those other places, get them in, and I think you're going to get those people to come into the comic stores if you do that. I mean, you can have the best of both worlds. You can still have your premium thing and charge $5 or $6 or whatever, and still do like a newsprint thing. I just don't. Yeah,
I love that idea. I mean, you know, it's funny, when I picked up the last couple issues of those comics in Walmart, I was going to read, you know, because I usually read like the comics I get to my son. And, you know, I was like flipping through that Batman book, and like the first story is all about kind of like kids getting kidnapped. You know, somebody's going to kidnapping kids.
Right,
So I didn't end up reading it to it because I was like, I didn't want to freak him out. But I was thinking that, you know, like, that's the kind of, you know, you don't want the Killing Joke maybe sitting in those boxes waiting for some kid to come by. But yeah, stuff that kids are going to get into, just like good adventure comics, you know.
Yeah, something that would
yeah.
fit into the comics code if it was still around. You know, put those on the newsstand, and then get the other people, you know, and put ads for the comic book stores in the comics that you're selling.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely,
you know,
that same thing, just like he does with the comic store locator. Because it's like, any kid that gets into comics, he's eventually going to go hunt down the comic shop like we all did, and then go in there and be like, whoa, you know, King Solomon's Mines.
Yeah, it would be nice to see that come back, because like I do remember, like, man, like the, you know, 4th and 5th grade especially, like I think almost every day after school I would bike to my local comic shop, and I even volunteered there to like help stock the racks, just to like get you know, like they'd hook me up with like one free comic if I helped them sort all their back issues and stuff for like an hour and a half. So I'd work for like an hour and a half for like $1.50 comic, you know.
Yeah.
So,
but like that I want to see that happening with like this generation, you know, where they're like biking to their local comic shop and like hanging out there, like you know. But like, once again, I still feel like we've made headway, because like if I go to my local comic shop now, there's girls in there. There's like people who don't like who are wearing like somewhat fashionable clothes there. And like when I was a kid, it was like literally like 7th graders and then like old kind of dudes in like sweatpants, you know. And like, so it's, to me, like there's all this good, but I don't want us to lose the stuff that was good, and I also don't want us to lose the headway we've made, you know. I like we were saying at the top, like I want to see comics just kill and do well. And I'm also stoked, just on a side note, like I'm so pumped about Berserkonaut and that getting into stores and stuff like that. That's going to happen, and it's going to be cool. And you know, like, and it's because of like, you know, like a lot of the people that are in the chats that stuff happens. And then also because Jeff, you like did the hard work and you got a badass book done, you know, which is, that's gotta feel good, you know?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I actually do get up, you know, especially, you know, now that I know the books are, you know, proofs coming back, the prints, they're going to be here. And yeah, I sometimes feel like high-fiving myself when I get up.
That's so awesome, man. And when do you get the proofs? Do you know, or do you not want to share?
Well, no, I'm waiting for the proof. So, anytime in the next couple of weeks. And then,
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
That's very exciting.
So yeah, I know we got to wrap up, but I just want I want to go back to the chat because Jim Redinger has awesome suggestions. He says spinner racks in the barbershops, and that's brilliant because for one, and they have all these like kid barber shops now. They like cuts for kids and all these things like that. Yeah. But not only like, even if you're not selling them, even if you're just having them there for them to read while you have a captive audience. I mean, right. Cutting their hair, give them a book to read. And, and then I think that's brilliant. But there's so much things like that. That's the stuff we got to think of. But, and I think that's, again, we have Peter on, we'll talk about that kind of stuff because I think he's just got a bunch of brilliant ideas, and I just hope other companies take notice of them. But anyway,
that's the kind of. I'm sorry, I want to interrupt you before you quit the show.
We can go a little long as long as you're okay with it. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing, but because like we were saying, it's like Marvel, DC. They need to get the back here. They got the money. They got this. But maybe that's like we were saying before too. Like the hill you want to die on. You want to get on that movement. I mean, maybe it's like an indie comics movement that does that kind of stuff. Maybe like with Samedi, like where he's printing on newsprint. Somebody in the chat mentioned how he's offering like a way to like tag on books onto their print run so that you can print cheaply on newsprint too, which I think is like a freaking awesome idea. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you could get enough indie guys and get them all going in the same direction to like get comics out there to like those kinds of places, but I mean, in a way, he's doing it. He's got his books on newsstands.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, to me, that's the answer. Like, that's the answer to me, to anybody who's like displeased with the mainstream of comics. Like, to me, it's like, welcome to the club. like indie guys have been to me, it's like comics need to be every genre. They need to be everywhere. Yeah. And to me, like, I think one of the biggest problems in comics is like people myopically like only looking at superhero comics or only looking at like indie like slice of life comics. Like I've literally met a lot of kind of snobby sort of cartoonists as well and comic fans that are like, I only do literary comics. And it's like they miss out on like these brilliant pieces of work, and I think a lot of them kind of forget how good like because most of us got into comics because of like the capes and tights stuff. There's nothing wrong with the capes and tights stuff. That stuff needs to exist. The kids stuff needs to exist. It all needs to exist. To me, the big thing that I want people to do is realize it does exist, and the problem isn't Marvel and DC. It's like, to me, it's the fact that there's all these people saying they want these things to exist. Make it happen with your money, Like if you want to see more literary comics, pay for more literary comics. Like start supporting cartoonists doing that. You want to see more like indie like superhero comics, like go pay the guys that are doing them because they're out there. You want to see more like creator-owned properties that are like adventure fantasies that are all ages. Like, dude, Scott Strickland is making a book, like buy his book, like that book exists. Like, so the problem isn't the books that are being made. The problem is just the consumers need to know. And then when the consumer has a problem with like the mainstream, like once again, just stop buying the mainstream and start like, just like to me, I don't like K-Rock, that was okay when I was younger and I was getting into rock and roll, but my taste in music require me to kind of do some digging and look into the indie stuff, let's do that. Let's make indie comics like the indie movement thing, like indie music in like the 2000s, like it could blow up. There's no reason it can't,
Yeah. Totally. For that. I know. You want to put a pin in it? Anyone else got anything they want to add on to that?
I'm good.
That's good. All right. So, okay, we're going to work our way around the room. So let's see. Okay, we'll start with Josh. Josh, let everyone know where they can find you. Anything you got to promote or anything?
You can find me at quarterlystories.com or occasionally on YouTube and sometimes on Scott's channel. It's this weird thing. I like show up there every other week. Jeff, where can we find you?
JeffLafferty.com is my website. The Berserkonaut is still on IndieGoGo in demand if anybody wants to pick up a copy. And you can just search it on IndieGoGo. It comes up in the front there. And that's it.
That's
Thanks for
awesome.
having me on, guys. I actually wanted to say that. Thanks a lot for having me on. This is like
I
a great conversation,
appreciate
so.
you coming on, and especially in such a tight, such a short notice and everything.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, I think it's so cool that in probably another week, I think every host ever of Artcasters will have completed the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge. I think that's pretty awesome. So, all right, so yeah, you're on my channel, so you know where to find me. I want to say thanks to everyone in the chat. The chat was really awesome tonight. Sorry I didn't get to comment on everyone's comments, but there's a lot of great stuff in there. So if you're watching the replay, that chat will be up there for you to read. Also, if you didn't get in the chat, if you're watching after the fact, feel free to leave a comment. I always get back to everyone I can in the comment section. And if you want to know when we're going to be, like I said, in a couple weeks we'll have Peter on. I don't know who Josh has lined up, if he has anyone, but for next week. But the way this thing works is it goes, like Josh said, it goes back and forth every other week. I think right now it's the even numbers are on my channel, odd numbers are on Josh's channel, unless one of us, and something happens down the road where we have to switch or one of us has problems. But that's kind of the way it works. It goes back and forth. So if you want to know where we're going to be, what day we're going to be on, what time, because that all can change, join our newsletter. There's a link in the description. Just click on that link, join the newsletter, and you will be in the know, because the way YouTube works, you're not always, even if you've got your bells on and your subscribes and all that stuff, sometimes you don't get notified. So follow the newsletter, and we don't spam you or anything. We just usually 30 minutes ahead of time, we send a newsletter out and let everyone know when we're going to go live. So again, thanks to Jeff, thanks to everyone in the chat, and we will see everyone next week. Later.
Hey, guys.